The NBA offseason in 2025 is in its infancy, and Charania just had an appearance on the Pat McAfee Show where he had some pretty bombshell quotes, if you ask me. This one specifically, where he said this offseason might be the most craziest ever. And if you're wondering, like me, does that make any sense? No, that's grammatically incorrect. So that means Shams probably knows that this is going to be absolutely insane summer when it comes to NBA transactions. And if anything goes down as far as big players getting moved, free agency trades, draft night mayhem, whatever goes down in the NBA, we are going to have you covered right here at NBA Now at Chat Sports. So make sure you are subscribed and turn your notifications on so we can break down whatever goes down and you guys can be the first to know. All right, the full Shams Charania quote from the McAfee Show appearance went as follows. He said, "This is, I think, the most anticipation team executives have had over an offseason. I think this offseason might be the most craziest ever because I think what you have right now is the parity of the league. It's so thin right now. Like, as far as the thin line of you can win a championship or you might be falling into the lottery. And I think the ability to go out there and improve your team and get them to a championship level, I think that's on the minds of everyone around the league. So how can you elevate your team?" Well, one thing we know is true, as far as teams being able to elevate their rosters and get closer to championship contention, it's not 2016 anymore where the salary cap has jumped a huge number where the new TV deal or something like that. The NBA salary cap has only gone up a little bit over the past couple of seasons, and that leaves basically every team with not enough money to sign any substantial free agents. If you remember back to 2016, a lot of teams had to spend, so a lot of role players and guys who probably didn't deserve massive contracts were getting paid huge numbers because teams had to use the fractions of their salary cap. That's not the case anymore. And if you look at what's going on around the league right now, there's only one or two teams that could sign a substantial contract free agent. Brooklyn, obviously having by far the most cap space this upcoming season with $55.8 million. They could sign 2 impact free agents. I'm not so sure how many want to go to Brooklyn. I'm also not sure how many impact free agents there are in this class. Detroit, they have $25 million, but then it quickly drops. Memphis to $17.5 million. Chicago to $14.5 million. New Orleans, $12.5 million. And then you just go further, a bigger jump to the 6th most cap-friendly team in the league. The Wizards only have $5 million available. The Hornets, $2.5 million. The Hawks now $964K. And you see we're getting closer and closer to the negative where we find the Spurs, the 9th most most relieved team, is already in the negative at $461,000. Also Utah, then they're the 10th most friendly salary cap team at negative $2.2 million. So nobody has money to go out there and sign free agents, and the crop of free agents isn't necessarily anything too insane, especially when you consider half of these guys that you're seeing on your screen in the top 10 either have a player option or they're restricted or they have a team option. Like, a lot of these guys aren't hitting the open market per se, so it doesn't necessarily mean that a lot of big contracts in free agency are going to be floated out this summer. Now, a lot of teams do have different exceptions, like the non-taxpayer mid-level where you can pay a guy up to $14 million. And then a couple of those teams obviously have $14 million or above to be able to go out there and sign a free agent or two of that kind of mid-level caliber. But what I expect is not a lot of monster contract signings. I expect a lot of trades within the NBA, and that's going to take a lot of cooperation between these franchises that all want to get better. And if that's going to happen this offseason, that means big names are going to be moving around. And we know there's been trade rumors running rampant about Giannis Antetokounmpo, Kevin Durant, the Boston Celtics to clean up their salary books. What are the New York Knicks going to do to improve with their season kind of on the ropes? The Philadelphia 76ers, are they going to try to clean up the mess that they made last offseason? The Warriors, are they going to take the next step? There's so many teams that are 1 or 2 moves away, and to really improve their rosters drastically, it's probably going to have to come via trade this offseason, and Shams thinks it's going to be the most craziest ever, so expect a ton of trades. Predict it for me in the comment section. Before we get into a couple of offseason predictions, the biggest name to land on a new team this offseason, who is it going to be? Is it a name we just talked about? Is it going to be a total surprise, shock superstar moving teams? Let me know who you guys think that name is down in the comments section. All right, now we're going to predict the biggest trade rumor outcomes, offseason outcomes, all that good stuff. And the 2 players that you see on screen are the 2 biggest dominoes that are potentially going to fall this offseason. Let's start with the Greek freak, Giannis Antetokounmpo. Is a trade potentially coming? He is not yet requested out of Milwaukee, but with Damian Lillard having a torn Achilles, he's going to be out all of next season. And the Bucks not really having enough firepower outside of Lillard to be able to complement Giannis and be a true contender in this league. That the league is kind of bracing for this to be the case and Giannis to ask out of Milwaukee. Look, he is one of the most underappreciated superstars in this league, and he's kind of fallen behind when it comes to the accolades and him rising up the all-time ranks and improving his legacy some more. He's going to need some more rings and contending for more titles. He hasn't done that in 4 years at this point. Mark Stein is saying the teams are, quote-unquote, quietly lining up trade packages in case he requests out. But the Bucks do believe they have a good chance at retaining Giannis this summer as they are trying to market Doc Rivers as a reason to stay, and the Eastern Conference being as bad as it has ever been in this forthcoming season as a reason for the Giannis could contend in the Eastern Conference. They should just keep him and run it back. But there are teams around the league that definitely want Giannis on their roster and are going to be making calls to Milwaukee this summer. Well, what about the San Antonio Spurs that have this crop of young talent? Imagine pairing up him and Victor Wembanyama. Houston, they have a ton of young assets, but they still need a big-time superstar. I feel like they don't necessarily have a true one on their roster just yet, and they won a ton of games this season. Excellent defense. Giannis would fit right in. What about the Knicks? With them kind of falling short in the Eastern Conference this year, could they look to move off of some of their big contracts and bring Giannis to New York, where he has vocally said it's his favorite place to play? What about the OKC Thunder? I'm a little bit hesitant to believe that he goes to the Thunder this offseason, even though they have the most resources and could create the most creative trade package out of any of these teams. If they win the championship, they're probably not going to be making many roster changes this offseason. And then the Golden State Warriors I included as well because, look, Giannis has talked very highly about Steph. There's been long links between the two parties, but does Golden State really have a compelling package to throw at the Bucks? It would probably have to be a situation where they cater to him. He lists a group of teams that he wants to play with, and if Golden State ends up being the best out of that crop, that's the only way that I could see him going to the Bay Area and playing with Steph. My prediction out of these 5 teams, Giannis gets traded to the Rockets. Look, if Shams is saying that this is going to be the most craziest offseason ever, then that means that we're going to need to see some top 10 level talents being moved to teams. And I think Giannis is going to end up asking out, and I think when it's all said and done, a team like San Antonio, they're probably going to be hesitant to move the number 2 overall pick with the trajectory that they're on with Victor Wembanyama long term. Maybe they're a little bit hesitant there. They also have Stephon Castle, who they would obviously have to give up in that deal. Like I said with OKC, they're going to win the title, not switch anything up. The Knicks, are they going to have the best package? Not as many first-round picks to throw around there. And then the Warriors, their package isn't all that great either. So I think the Houston Rockets are going to be the team that wins the Giannis sweepstakes with their package that looks something like this. Alperen Sengun is probably the player that is going to be the biggest blue chip in this deal. But then you also get a former number 3 overall pick in Jabari Smith, who has shown progression over the first couple seasons of his career, has a lot of untapped potential. You also get Cam Whitmore, who was a late first-round pick last year, a guy who fell in the draft and can score the basketball. You get a couple of first-round picks as well, the number 10 overall pick this season. You get a Brooklyn Nets swap right in 2027, and they don't look to be good anytime soon. That's a very premium draft asset. And then a 2028 first-round pick from the Houston Rockets. Who knows how good they'll be in a couple of seasons. I like this deal for both sides in a sense. Milwaukee gets some win-now talent, and they get future draft capital down the line. And by the way, that win-now talent, both of them are super, super young. Does Giannis get traded this summer? Let me know what you guys think down in the comment section. Type Y for yes or type N for no. I'm trying to hear from all the NBA fans out there on whether or not they think Giannis could get traded for something like this, or maybe a different team goes out there and makes the big swing. Let's talk about KD right now, though, because it feels like he is more guaranteed to be traded at this point. He was almost dealt at the trade deadline back in February. There was talks about Golden State. There was talks about San Antonio. And now it seems that after the Suns missed the play-in entirely, and Kevin Durant at this stage in his career, he's going to want to try to make one last run at a championship, and I don't think it's going to be in Phoenix. Brian Windhorst said, quote, I'm like 98% sure he's not going to be a Sun next year. How it works out, though, I'm about 1% sure. And there's a lot of uncertainty around what KD is going to be. What kind of package is he going to get back to Phoenix? Look, I don't think it's going to be as much as a lot of people think Kevin Durant is worth in a trade. Phoenix doesn't have a lot of leverage in this situation. Clearly, KD doesn't want to lose many more basketball games, and I don't think Phoenix is going to help him in that pursuit. So some biggest Kevin Durant trade suitors. Well, a couple of similar teams are going to be on this list, like the San Antonio Spurs, like the New York Knicks, like the Houston Rockets. But in this scenario, Giannis is going to H-Town, so we're not sending KD over there to Space City. The Spurs are back in the mix. The Timberwolves are a huge rumored interested team in Durant. I think he's talked highly about Anthony Edwards and wanted to play with him. The Knicks as well. I mean, it could be a lower cost option than going out and trading for Giannis, and he would fit in seamlessly up there. And then the Miami Heat, there's a lot of rumors about them trying to pair KD up with Bam Adebayo and Tyler Hero to make a little big three that could easily contend in the Eastern Conference. So what do I think happens with Kevin Durant? Well, according to Shams, the San Antonio Spurs and Kevin Durant had mutual interest at the deadline, and this is kind of the reason why I ended up making the deal for Giannis to Houston, because I don't think San Antonio is going to be in the market for Giannis. I think they're going to be in the market for KD, as that is a more cost-efficient move, something where they won't have to give up the number 2 overall draft pick in 2025, so they can bring in a Dylan Harper, they can have De'Aaron Fox, they can have Kevin Durant, and they can have Victor Wembanyama hopefully healthy for 25, 26, and beyond. That team can probably make a pretty strong Western Conference Finals run, if you ask me. So the deal goes as follows. It's a 3-team deal, by the way, that involves the Brooklyn Nets. So with Brooklyn kind of having all that cap space that we talked about earlier in the show, they'll be able to absorb some money here. With Phoenix being a second apron team, it's not going to be easy to make a 1-for-1 deal for Durant. So with Durant going to the San Antonio Spurs in this scenario, the Suns will get back Nick Claxton, Keldon Johnson from San Antonio, the 14th pick in the draft, and the 2027 first-round pick from Atlanta. And I don't think they're going to be necessarily good. That's a great draft asset as well. The 14th pick, in my opinion, is probably as good as it's going to get for a Kevin Durant trade. Maybe they can get the 10th pick in a Rockets deal, but I'd be a little bit even hesitant to suggest that. Phoenix is going to want to get as much draft capital as possible. They have none, and they don't control their picks over the next couple of years. So it would be imperative that they get a bunch of draft assets back in this deal. And then Devin Vassell from the Spurs ends up going to the Nets in this deal, because they're going to have to give up some players of value. It's not going to just be Keldon Johnson leaving town. And then the Spurs' first-round pick in 2029 will head to Brooklyn as they make this deal happen. So I think this is a good deal for kind of all sides involved. The Nets get a good, solid young piece and some draft capital for participating in this trade. The Suns maybe don't get as much back as you'd like, but they're really prioritizing the draft capital that you get back, 2 first-round picks for Kevin Durant. So with that being said, we have a couple more different off-season predictions here, a couple free agent moves, couple of trade rumors that are kind of smaller than the big fish in Giannis and KD. So let's go through a couple of those now. With the current crop of free agents not being that great, Jonathan Kuminga is actually one of the biggest dominoes to fall this offseason, especially with the Warriors trying to improve around the margins as well. So I predict that Jonathan Kuminga will be sent to the Bulls in a sign-and-trade for Coby White. That's kind of works out monetarily. Like, Kuminga has to make double what the Warriors get back in any sign-and-trade. So Coby White makes $12.5 million. Kuminga gets a $25 million a year deal from Chicago, and he gets to go play inefficient basketball up there. The Warriors get another scorer. I think it works out for both sides, with Coby White not being in the future plans for Chicago. Next up, we have Julius Randle, who over the past couple of games has not been making a great case for him as a free agent this offseason. He looked to be making a bag and guaranteed to be declining his player option for the first couple series this postseason, but over the last couple, it hasn't been great. I do think he signs with the Detroit Pistons. They end up moving some money around, clearing some space up, and they can make a deal about $30 to $35 million for Julius Randle. And then Jrue Holiday of the Boston Celtics is a big domino that has to fall with them trying to clear up money on their books. I think he's traded to the Los Angeles Clippers for a package that includes Bogdan Bogdanovic, as well as potentially Derrick Jones Jr. Maybe Boston reroutes him somewhere else and tries to clear up close to $10 million off of their books with a deal like this, and there's probably more moves that will follow. I can't really predict what Kristaps Porzingis is going to get right now, or any teams that will be interested in him. But a couple of players that are on the free agency market, technically, that have some player options, a couple of longtime vets in this league. I think they all stay home. To be honest, LeBron sticks around with the Lakers, Harden sticks around with the Clippers, and then Kyrie obviously being injured with a torn ACL. He'll be coming back potentially late next season. He'll be staying obviously with the Dallas Mavericks as well. So those are my offseason predictions, given that Charania of ESPN is calling this potentially the most craziest offseason ever. Well, bombs are going to have to drop all summer long. And if you guys want to be tapped in with all of them, make sure you are subscribed to the channel. Lock Us In is the #1 source for NBA content all offseason long. My name is Tyler Smith. We'll see you guys all in the next one. And go down below and hit that sub button. It's going to be a crazy offseason. The most craziest ever.